have a last minute change to just the front end of this call. We will still open it up to whatever topics and questions you want to present, but we are going to begin with hearing from leaders of AER and AER accreditation. So Mark Riker is the interim Chief Executive AER. He hasn't quite joined us yet, but I'm sure he'll be here shortly.
It should be on now. Hopefully you can hear
there
me.
he is. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
So we will start with Mark, and then Mark, how about you introduce Ellie after that? So I hope all of you are not just familiar with AER, but members. And so this is a strong encouragement from VisionServe Alliance to become members of AER, get involved, and look to them for resources. Mark Riker is one of the strongest, most talented professionals we have in this field. He knows so much about the history and the foundations of what makes us tick as professional providers. So Mark, with that little introduction, take it away.
Wow, Lee, if I knew that you were going to be that generous, I would have made the check I wrote out to you even bigger. Thanks for that.
It's not too late.
I appreciate it. So pleasure to be with you all. Always hard to think through, since our field can be so insular and people have been in it for a good long while. It's hard to know how to summarize something like who in the heck is AER, why should you care, and what do we do about it to people who may already know it so thoroughly. But AER has been around since 1984. Prior to 1984, there were two organizations in the field representing professionals in the education and rehabilitation spaces that got together and decided that two groups could be a lot stronger if they got under the same tent. And I think that's worked out well for both groups, both sets of professional disciplines, the folks working on the education side and on the rehab and adult services side. Those two organizations have been in existence for years and years and years, decades, in fact, well over a century. And we like to brag about how our forefathers and mothers back then were folk who made a lot of things happen in this field over the course of time. It was that group of folks who helped to form the American Foundation for the Blind in the early 1900s. Were instrumental in putting in place the American Printing House for the Blind. You could go on and on with the alphabet soup of productive things that the folks in the education and adult services worlds helped to make happen. And so I wonder if we can maybe have folks put themselves on mute, if at all possible. There we go. It sounded like we had a woodpecker with a Teflon beak join the call. So in any case, what are we doing today? AER is all about providing as much support as we possibly can to every soul who provides support of one professional shape or other, to kiddos, to working age adults, and older folk who experience any degree of vision loss. And how do we do that? We try to provide as much opportunity as we can for cross-fertilization across those various professional disciplines, and for essentially master class level kinds of opportunities for learning through networking, through conferences, and through online and other professional development opportunities. Obviously, this year is we've slipped into some wormhole, or whatever the expression is. In 2020, it's a strange year. And I can honestly tell you, I can remember years ago in the blindness, vision impairment field, people had such high hopes for the year 2020. And I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in over the course of time where people were saying, by the year 2020, that's such a perfect thing because of the pun on 2020 vision, and why can't and here we are. 2020 has ended up being anything but
what we expected.
Year. So in any case, our conference is not happening this year, but we'll be doing it. Certainly our biennial conferences, we do them every other year in the even years. And that's where we do conduct a member business, et cetera. So we're not doing that this year, but be staying tuned for us to be hopefully breaking out by the end of the summer, if not a little bit before, some I wouldn't say we're doing things new or that no one else is doing, but hopefully what AER can bring to the table is the breadth of subject matter, continuing ed and professional development opportunities that maybe other groups aren't able to do because it's not necessarily in their mission. We've got groups that do focus on education or do focus on employment or rehabilitation and are just incredible at it, they're expert at it. But we're not trying to compete with them. We're in fact trying to provide the breadth of content that all of our members and friends want to see. One of the activities that AER took on a couple years ago was accreditation of private service agencies in our field, as well as accreditation of university programs preparing the next generation of professionals in the whole array of professional disciplines. The accreditation is an old and venerated topic in our field, but some years ago, AER said, you know what, we need to step up and perhaps breathe new life into the whole matter of ensuring quality and through standards for these various programs. And so AER went through an extensive process of revising and upgrading, we think, the character and content of the standards. And in many ways, while accreditation is certainly not a new function in our field by any stretch, AER is very much in the position of starting, I don't want to say from scratch, but starting our own, certainly foray into this, you know, hopefully breaking down some barriers and opening up some new doors. And I cannot think of anybody else that I would rather turn this microphone, as it were, over to now than to our friend and my colleague, Dr. Ellie Dupre. And Ellie has been a longtime leader. If you don't know her, you should. And she's a fun person to know. But in addition to having a careers-long commitment to standards, professionalism, and credentialing, Ellie has senior executive experience out the wazoo, to use the technical legal term, and was the executive director, CEO of Lighthouse of Broward for years and years, and currently is serving as an exec for the Florida Association of Private Agencies. So Ellie's come on a contract basis with us at AER to help us out as we're in this transition. Lee introduced me as the interim executive director, and that status is definitely an interim one. I have no updates, and it's well above my pay grade to worry about them, about what the process will be as AER moves forward with a search. But we're definitely in a whole host of transitions these days. As that process evolves, as a board that's been seated now for 2 years goes off, and a new board comes in late July, and as we start to build this new continuing education professional development function that AER frankly probably should have and could have done a while ago, but now we've got all the reasons in the world to do it. So with that, Ellie, over to you to talk to us about accreditation and to introduce yourself.
You're on mute, Ellie.
Whose fault is that?
It wasn't mine, but I thought you should know.
Oh, okay, well, I said a lot of good stuff there, but I'll try and repeat it. Yes, I don't really want to go into introducing myself because I think Mark did a really good job. But I want to mention one little fact, which I don't think Mark is aware of. He referenced 1984 as the year when the educators and the people primarily serving adults decided to form AER BVI. And I was at that meeting in Phoenix.
How about that?
Did that. in
Yeah.
1984. So
Nice.
I was at that moment in history.
I was in ninth grade.
Where were you?
Just to make that, just to have a little fun with you there.
Were you in the principal's office or in the classroom that day?
Detention, I think.
So, yeah, so I joined the team at AER as a consultant to keep the accreditation process flowing. That was one of the main duties of Angela Smith. A lot of you know her. She was in Atlanta at the great VisionServe Alliance meeting last fall. And she resigned about a month ago, and about a week or two after she resigned, I started climbing the learning curve of how AER has organized its accreditation program. So I think I've pretty much gotten to the top of that. And actually, I'm working right now with 17 agencies at varying stages of going through their accreditation process. And I've completed communicating with almost all of them. So some of them have already been practically finished, and others are at the moment of thinking about starting. So it's kind of an unusual time to be starting accreditation process this year, because AER has determined that it really would be wisest if we did not have any on-site visits this year. So people can start their process, but agencies can start their process, which does include an on-site visit, but they won't have the visit until probably early of 2021. So we'll see how that works out for people. But I'm very interested in the process. I've sat in on mostly higher education accreditation teams, which I had not been familiar with that at all. So that was a very interesting thing for me to learn about. And that actually has been more of a role for AER for a longer period of time.
That's right.
But I don't know how many agencies are on the phone right now that are accredited or are thinking about being accredited. But
Well, why don't we stop and ask if you would
Okay.
please indicate by raising your hand if you have access to that. Does everybody know how the raise your hand button works? Raise your hand or thumbs up. Raise your hand if you are currently accredited. Let's do that first. With an organization that has national accreditation. Wow, not too many. Oh, there's a few more. Looks like
sometimes
about,
it's hard to find that little hand.
it is. So right now I'm seeing 8. And then put your hands down, please. And do that again if you're not yet accredited, but you're interested in that. Okay, and we have, well, you got some prospects there. I'm seeing 7, so
Okay.
good.
What kind of attendance do we have today, Lee?
We have currently 64 people on the call.
That's fantastic. Thanks.
Mhm.
Well, let me make a pitch for accreditation, and I'll also make a pitch for certification at the same time, because it happens that I also serve as a board member of ACVREP, the certification body for our profession. And I've been on a lot of accreditation teams over the years, including for my own agencies, whichever ones I was working for at the time. And I have to say, not only is it a tremendous learning experience to be part of an accreditation team, either in your agency or because you become part of a panel that goes to another agency. I think it's one of the most intense learning experiences you can go through. And you really become, I think, a better team member in your own agency, because you understand better not only how your own job is organized for success, but also how the whole agency is structured for success. It also is a great opportunity to really appreciate the larger world that an agency works in, and to see how consumers themselves contribute to having a healthy organization, how other organizations in your community contribute to that. So the whole process of going through a self-study in and of itself, I think is most of the value of pursuing accreditation. And that self-study probably takes several months for an organization to go through, between gathering some materials to support your statement that you are a good agency, but also just thinking about the questions and saying, well, where would we put ourselves in this regard? Would we say that we meet this particular standard, that we partially meet the standard, or that we don't meet the standard? Now, there's some standards that you have to meet in order to be accredited, and they're all mostly related to management. And I'm talking here to agencies instead of schools. It's a little bit different for universities. And but there's a lot of standards where if you partially meet them or even don't meet them, you can still be accredited. You just have to commit to rectifying the problem, which, why wouldn't you? You would, of course, want to tie up those loose ends that you might have uncovered. But it's really a valuable thing every now and then to take a moment to step back and just kind of reflect on what you're doing, which I think at the moment, with all of us working from home, we're probably doing more reflecting than we want to. We would want to do more interacting again and just do the real work. And it's not easy right now to come up with all of these strategies to serve people in such an unusual circumstance of an entire world being shut down. But I do just want to make the case for you to consider, maybe now is a time to be thinking about it, because it's another project that perhaps can get some attention because of the situation. Maybe not. But I think accreditation is truly a valuable thing, just as is certification, and having a staff that has people who not only have committed to a rigorous education process to become a professional in our field, but also has gone the extra step of testing that knowledge that they've built up and that experience that they've built up against the combined wisdom of people from universities and people who've been working in the field. And joining that group, it's an elite group. I've heard it called that our profession are unicorns because we're so rare, but the unicorns are very pretty, and I think it's a good thing to be a certified unicorn. So I'm open to the questions.
This is Lee. Ellie, would you mind putting just a couple more seconds into a finer point, the distinction between certification and accreditation?
Yeah, okay, well, that's a good idea. Accreditation is a process that an organization goes through to demonstrate that it is operating in a transparent manner, that it's using best practices, and that it's organized in such a fashion that donors as well as consumers can have faith that the organization is going to be there into the future, and that the organization will do a good job. One of the things you have to remember, and I know I'm talking to people who know this, but I'm just saying it in order to answer Lee's question, is, most of the people that we serve have never been blind before. And so it comes as quite a shock, and there's really no frame of reference to judge whether we're doing a good job or not. And that is one of the key elements that is answered for a person when you can say, this is an accredited agency. We went through a rigorous process in order to establish amongst our peers the fact that we are operating at a high level, and that the services you're going to get here are the services that have been tried and true and can help you. And you might be happy that we're talking to you and that we're sitting next to you and maybe we're holding your hand, but that really isn't enough. That's not all that a blind person needs. Maybe it's what you need right now, but we're looking toward a much brighter future for you, and we're going to help you reach it. And that's what accreditation means, that we're using the right techniques for that. Now, certification is something that an individual goes through And it's a different process, but it's also a rigorous process, and it's also a process that is that benefits from the input of many people in our field. And it's a combined process to make sure that the education that you have and the experience that you have, that you're applying it right. And why not pin that blue ribbon on your chest to show that yes, there's a lot of good people out there who want to do something nice for blind people. And there's even a lot of professionals out there who come across blind people in their daily life. But our visually impaired specialists, are the experts on serving people who are blind or visually impaired. We have dedicated our education specifically to that question. We're not making it up on the fly. We're not coming up with some idea. The things that we're using are things that have been shown to work. And that is something that it's a reason to be proud to be a certified professional, and to encourage other people to become members of our field, to become our partners in this field and in this very noble cause, really, that we take on. So that's the difference between certification and accreditation. So I'm Ellie at aerbvi.org if you want more information about becoming accredited. And I'll be glad to talk to you as well.
And you heard from Kathy Zeider, who is the CEO for ACVREP a few weeks ago. And that is an organization that you can go onto their website to learn more about certification if that's something new to you as well. So I'd like to ask if anybody has any questions or topics you'd like to discuss specifically related to AER and or accreditation first. So we'll stop there, take a breath.
We had one question come in from Jackie Borchardt. She says, are there any financial benefits for agencies related to accreditation?
Well, I know that when I was the executive director of a small nonprofit agency here in Florida, I often was asked if the agency was accredited when I did grants. I can't say that I ever was told that I wouldn't. Actually, I take that back. There was one grant application that I remember putting together where you had to be accredited in order to be considered for funding from that organization. So that would be one financial benefit for sure.
So I think we also had on chat, so I don't know if you can everybody can see that or not, but thank you, Christy Householter. She explained that to raise your hand, you move your cursor to the bottom of your screen and tab until you reach reactions. It's a smiley face and is after the chat and share screen and record buttons if you are using tab. I point that out again because I would now like to ask you if you or anyone on your staff at your organization are members of AER. Please thumbs up or raise your hand. Wow. Let's see. Oh my goodness, quite a few.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. Lots of folks. Great. I would say 20, 25 people on this call are. And then I'd also like to ask you to do the same thing. Put your thumbs and hands down for a moment and put them up if you or staff in your organization are ACVREP certified. Yes, we have, wow. Yep, even more. So that looks like 30, 35, maybe 40 people. Yay, we like to see that.
That's excellent.
And you know, to be fair, there is more than one kind of accreditation, especially if you are in another country. But of course, our hearts are near and dear to the one that is specific to our field. But I applaud all of you that are engaging in any of those kinds of professional standards. It's very good for us. So there's one person that still has her hand up, and I'm hoping it's because she has a question or comment. Would that be true, Sassy? Do you have a comment or question, Sassy?
I do. I just have a really quick comment. Ellie, thank you so much. That was amazing. My only question would be in terms of certifying for both accreditation and certification on those grant reports, as you mentioned. Once you receive the accreditation, do you need to go through a renewal process? And if so, how often does that take place?
Good question.
For accreditation, if you receive full accreditation, you will have to go through the process again in 5 years. Sometimes you can get a conditional accreditation if you didn't meet all the standards. And in that case, you have a project to do to complete that piece that was missing. And then you have a due date for that that's less than 5 years away, and then you have to do that, and then they'll extend you to the full 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Am I going to get a list of this chat so that I can see who asked for more information?
Yes, you are. Everybody will have access to that. So,
Okay.
yes. Okay, so any further questions about AER or AER accreditation? And if not, we'll open it up for other comments and questions. What would you like to talk about today? We have actually a couple of announcements that I'd like Wendy to make right now before we go on, in case any of you need to drop off. So Wendy, you want to share a couple of things?
Sure. I want to let you all know that there is a link to an online resource folder where all of the resources we talk about on this weekly call are put. And I'm going to put the link in the chat for you right now. And if we have additional documents from today's call, we will put them there after the call. And this goes, last week we were collecting a lot of COVID-19 reopening playbooks from different organizations. You'll find several of them there, and we're constantly receiving new ones. We'll put those there to help you all. The other thing that we have for you all is a very, very quick, it will take you 2 minutes or less, survey on virtual events that we would really appreciate if you could even do it now. Take a minute and go over there and answer that survey on virtual events. We want to know what kinds of virtual events you all like. We want to know if you would be open to a virtual conference, should we have to go that direction. And we want to know what kinds of activities would interest you there. So that will really help us if you can go there and answer that. Thank you so much.
And also the concert, Wendy.
That's right. Tonight, we were just found out that there is a concert in honoring Global Accessibility Awareness Day. It is tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's on our Facebook page. We've shared it. Thank you to our friends at Vispero who told us all about that. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, hope you'll join us. Okay, we have a question from Deborah Gold.
Hi, Mark and Ellie and everybody. It's Deborah. Mark, I don't know if you remember me. I hope so.
I do, and I even read your very long email to me just a little while ago.
Good. So I thought I would ask the question again here. It's not about accreditation, obviously, but Mark knows that I just sent him an email like a couple of hours ago. Actually, I didn't realize he was going to be on the call today, but it's better to have these things in writing. I'd like to know what plans AER has to support the profession around reopening plans, and in specific, looking at a guidance, we are looking for a guidance document for in particular for any face-to-face service that we may be reinstating, but I was chatting with one of my orientation and mobility instructors in our one-to-one yesterday, and I said, what would it take? What do you need in order to feel comfortable coming back to instruction, in person-to-person instruction? And he said, I really would like some guidance from AER or another body that would allow me to know that I'm acting appropriately and within, we're all very aware of the CDC and the Canadian Public Health guidelines, but we're looking for specific to the profession, and we're wondering what work is being undertaken in that direction.
Well, I'll start, but Lee can jump in as well, because a number of our groups have been actively involved in collaborative conversation, which will hopefully lead to something productive around, the whole host of issues in delivering remote instruction, or how are we supposed to cope with these wild and crazy changing days? And the most recent conversation we had started to broach the whole matter of grappling with legal liability and how we address issues that are implied there. I know, based on the email that you sent to me earlier today, I think you're looking for specific policy guidance, written policy guidance. I can tell you that certainly within AER, there are folk who are beginning to mobilize to do that, because I think everyone is sort of recognizing that there needs to be exactly what you're talking about, something that looks authoritative, that is a statement of the profession, by the profession, to the professions, and like any consensus process, it'll probably take longer than any of us want, but I think those efforts are underway. And you bring up this whole question of policy guidance. It's one of the areas, certainly in the education space, that a number of our groups have been working on for a long time, not just having to do with this COVID stuff at all, but having to do with just the whole question of, at least here in the States, the last time the US Department of Education issued any meaningful policy guidance having to do with this education of blind and visually impaired kiddos was in the year 2000. So here we are. Nothing like having timely and up-to-date resources. So what we want to do is to make sure that any policy guidance or any of this kind of stuff that we're developing, it's not one-off stuff, and it's not just I'm one of those people who I want to resist the temptation to say, well, we drop everything now and look only at everything through a COVID lens. I think it's more the question that we have perpetual or perennial problems, perennial challenges to address. Personnel shortage among the, would be at the top of my list. Other people have things at the top 2 or 3 things on their lists. But I think all of those situations, all of those challenges continue. It's just that we're in a whole different world, or a whole different shade has been cast over all of that. So whatever we do, I hope that we're not simply invested in the, if I can put it this way, the sort of short-term, gee, this whole thing has fallen on us now. This new tree has fallen on us. How do we get out from under it? But think more about how we get out of the forest. I wasn't sure if I would be able to extract myself from my own metaphor there, but I think I did.
Thanks, Mark. It's Deborah again. Just a quick follow-up question to that. Is AER involved in any talks with anybody at the universities with respect to research related to COVID and the experience of people who are blind during this time? I'm talking about adults specifically, because that's what my organization is concerned about. But I was just wondering if you know of research being undertaken that could assist us or provide us with some kind of evidence base with respect to the experience of blind people and anything related to getting out and about now and into the future.
Well, it's good. So I know it's hard to know who all does or doesn't know, because it seems like it's always the same people involved all the time. So sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not. A number of our groups, some 18, 19 of our groups, were inspired by our friends at IRA to come together and do some research, conduct some research, survey folks who are blind and visually impaired to get their sense get a sense of how what all this is doing to our respective lives. I think that research is starting to emerge now, but the results of it, I know that the American Foundation for the Blind was certainly, sort of the research analysis muscle behind that effort. So I think if they haven't done it now, that you'd be looking for that sometime soon. I mean, you don't have to be one of the 19 organizations to have access to it. I think the intention is to make that information widely available. If in fact for all I know, it got posted today and everyone's already talking about it. But that's one area. I know that you mentioned adults. I mean, certainly there's been additional research that's I think still underway. I think they're still collecting data that is kids related, but I hear you about adults. And as usual, particularly as older people who are blind or visually impaired, that's the largest population or whatever subgroup, whatever segment of our community. And it's, what did we do? Our field went and provided or made a priority of looking at education, kids issues, and the tech tech world that IRA represents. Not being critical of those two, but it stands to reason that the kind of is what has happened, where the research that has been done focuses on education, and at least through IRA's research project was certainly broader than just tech, but driven by a tech company. But we need to be doing a lot more as a field to be organized about research, and a number of us have talked about that for forever and a day. I remember, Deborah, a session that you and I and Dr. Corinne Kirshner and any number of names that we could drop had in 2004 down in Orlando, Florida, at the AER conference, talking about international research agendas, and maybe we ought to be re-energizing those conversations.
I said thanks, Mark, on mute. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
So this is Lee. I'd like to jump in and let you, Deborah, and everyone know that also Mississippi State University and the NRTC recently pursued and just received approval on a project, to do a project developing emerging practices. And this will be research that will include, evidence-based, and we'll be looking for input from many of us. So I'm really excited that Sylvia and Michelle McDonald there are pursuing that. And, just keep, actually Sylvia is on. Sylvia.
Yeah, thanks for remembering to mention that, Lee. I should have mentioned that too.
She's on the call now. Sylvia, would you like to unmute yourself and say a few words about this?
Hi, everyone.
There she is.
Yes. Hi. We just got approval today to move forward with that. And we had actually already identified a couple facilitators to do it, knowing that we would probably get the approval to do it. We'll probably start with really just developing a thorough survey, and then hold lots of focus groups, virtual focus groups, and individual conversations. But we will be using starting off using some of that data we've been collecting from you with those Excel sheets to kind of compose our survey. And then at the towards the end, once we gather lots of data, we'll pull together a task force of professionals to really analyze, dig deep, and come up with some things. But I have to tell you that our timeline is to have everything completely done by December, because it's time. We want to be timely.
Yeah.
So that's why we actually are hiring consultants, because we need people who can dedicate, time to it to really work.
That's awesome. Very exciting. And there are a couple of subject matter expert groups through ACVREP that are also continuing to work on.
I already talked to Kathy.
Okay, good. Great. So what other questions or issues would you like to discuss with this fabulous group you have gathered here? Nikki, do you want to mention your what you're seeking guidance on or suggestions for?
Sure. The feedback I've been getting from my staff is that particularly our older folks, I mean, we're not even trying to do Zoom with them unless it's a call in. But even to do just a regular conference call or anything like that, we're even using Uber Conference with for some of our things because you can call out on it. And even so, you know, a lot of the older folks are going, I don't know what this is. I don't want to do this. And even when we can get them to the table, they lose interest very quickly. We're really having trouble keeping them engaged. So I'd love to hear what other folks are doing.
So what's working for you reaching out and engaging older adults in vision rehabilitation remotely?
So Nikki, this is Sylvia Perez at the OIB TAC. We have a we have a community of practice, oib-tac.org. And in there under the direct services tab, we have a remote resources folder with lots of resources in there. But, you know, it's interesting because I talked to someone yesterday and they're having great results. In fact, they're like, do we even want to return to face-to-face? I'm like, yes, you have to return to some face-to-face. But, I mean, they have had great results. And so, you know, it's all over the place. That's why we want good data. But short, frequent, one subject or topic at a time is what we're seeing over and over and over. You can't overwhelm people, and keep your groups very small, 1 to 3, maybe 5 people. By the way, Lee, when we're done, I have another thing I want to bring up.
All right, thanks.
With the group here, Sylvia?
Yes, please.
Okay, go for it.
So, and I'm going to say Sassy, a little shout out to Sassy, who really made me think about this, okay? Because she's had several great Facebook posts about what does human guide look like in the future? What, you know, how do we do physical distance as cane users, as guide dog users, etc.? And how do we, you know, maneuver the medical system, transportation, etc. So Sassy, you just made me start thinking about it so much. And I started like looking around and seeing all these siloed conversations going on. So today I just said, I'm just gonna start reaching out to some of these siloed groups and just pull together a conversation. So I'm hoping sometime next week or the early part of the following week to just arrange a Zoom call with a conversation. No real, maybe I'll have an agenda with some people, and Sassy, you'll be number 1 to speak. But I want to bring someone from medical, someone from transportation. NFB has already committed to participate. ACVREP, subject matter, hoping to get. So I just want some people who really are committed and passionate about O&M, advocacy, et cetera, to just be a part of that conversation. I don't have an agenda. I just think we need to discuss it.
That's great.
Well, Sassy really thinks we should discuss it, so I'm all about it.
Good job.
Oh, I missed what somebody chatted something, but I missed what it said. Somebody asked me something in the chat, but I missed what it said.
I might not be able to see it if it was sent to you.
Oh, I don't know if it was. I'll try to go see.
Okay.
Christy Householter said, can we get on your invite list, Sylvia?
Send me, you know what, I'll put it out, and then, I mean, it'll be limited to, you know, like 100 people, you know, or something, but I'll put it out when we have it all set up.
Good. Yeah, Christy would be a great contributor. So also some of you have asked for suggestions again of how to conduct remote services, especially, you know, suggestions for tactical, practical ways to do this. So if you haven't been on OIB Tax website, go there. There are some great suggestions there. And for a broader population, I'm also recommending you check out WinTAC's website, WINTAC. It's a sister program to OIB TAC, and they have a very similar commitment to supporting providers and are encouraging creative thinking through this time, and good information there as well. Any other questions? Let's see, can you send the invite to group? Sylvia, where will you put the invite? Lots of questions for you, Sylvia. Can we talk about work experiences for our people there this summer? So that's actually a great segue, and I don't mind spending 5 minutes talking about it right now in case you can't make it. But we have another call tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that is for those of you who want to talk about summer programming. So if you are interested, we're going to put the registration information right here in chat. You do have to register for that call, like you had to register for this one. And we are planning to have breakout rooms so that if there are a group of you that want to talk about summer programming for early intervention age, school age, transition, adults, we can break you out into rooms. I just want to caution you, I don't have any experts coming other than you. Okay, you are the experts. And so this will be a self-guided discussion for you to share resources and information with each other. So it's that kind of discussion. But would somebody like to share right now anything of what they're thinking about for summer programming? Well, let's be more specific in response to Jolie's question. Work experiences. How, those of you involved in providing especially transition work experiences, how are you doing that in this environment? Any great ideas? Wow, that many, huh? It's tough. Ooh, well, I hope somebody has some suggestions tomorrow. Yeah, I'm not getting anybody offering those suggestions. Wow, how many? I'll bet you a lot of you have contracts or typically provide or arrange for work experience over the summer. Can I ask you to give me an indication through a thumbs up or raised hand? Is that something you would typically do? Okay. Yep, I see maybe 10 of you, a dozen, but you're not sure how you're going to do it yet, right? Well, I hope we can come up with some suggestions for tomorrow.
Yeah, Lee, this is Christy Householder from Computers for the Blind, and that's exactly what we're finding. You know, we were scheduled to provide computers to lots of summer programs, and a couple have opted for virtual, and that's tough. You know, can imagine all the logistics, and especially when we have this short time frame. We actually are also a location for on-the-job training for several youth groups here in the Dallas area, and those have all been canceled. So from our perspective, it's virtual or nothing. So I'm interested tomorrow to find out if there is anything happening face-to-face.
Okay, yeah, I am too. And Kathy Zeider has put out information or a suggestion on chat that the American Printing House has summer camp resources online. So their activities are probably going to be focused on children, but check out their website. Tons of information at APH. If that's not one of your regular resources, please add that to your list. So Barbara Peterson, would you mind sharing your comment, unmuting yourself and talking about that a little bit?
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button.
There you go.
So we are in Pittsburgh at Blind and Vision, and we are having a difficult time with the transition job coaching portion of our summer program because OVR has put a hold on any community-based assessments this far. And I don't want to plan for something that we're not going to be able to produce. So we're looking at not doing that portion of it, but just doing a technology portion. So I'll be very interested tomorrow what other ideas people have that maybe we could learn from.
We've had several meetings, virtual meetings, the last couple of weeks talking about the need for RSA to be flexible, particularly with transition pre-ETS payments and contracts. And the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. If there's some encouragement for being creative and providing services, but is CBWA, when you say that somebody's not, I'm not familiar with those acronyms, but is it your state agency that is not really permitting the provision of the services in a way that you could get reimbursed, Barbara?
Correct. It's Office of Vocational Rehab in Pennsylvania. Okay.
We need to know that. We at VisionServe Alliance are trying to sort out, I don't know if we can be effective or not, but how we go back to RSA and talk about the disconnect. We heard from a legislative staff person yesterday that it's his impression that they have given the authority to be flexible to states and that they've been very cooperative, but I'm hearing a disconnect.
I think it's a conversation with Chaz at WinTAC too, Lee.
Okay, great.
He would be a great resource.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So I'd like to know from this group especially, if you could shoot me an email with just I don't need a whole page, but a paragraph about the problem you're having specifically related to, state agency funds for your programs for the summer. I'd like to know.